from one location to another. And since you are a very good manager, you decide, listen, if I have specialists who know how to steer, he will do a better job. If I have a specialist who knows how to apply brake, he'll do a better job. So you land up putting somebody who's at the steering, another person who is at the brake, another person who is at the clutch, and another person at the accelerator. And you sitting there are just looking ahead and sending inputs. On paper, it sounds very good. We have specialists handling everything. But how comfortable are you with this situation? Do you think by your exceptional coordination capabilities and giving the correct command to every part of the company or every part of the person will help you steer the car comfortably and safely to the location you want to reach? Coming back to the management of our companies, what we have landed up doing is we spread the resources of the company thin by focusing very heavily on each and every sub-part of the company. But to think of it, focusing everywhere is actually not focusing at all. This is one thing that we have seen being practiced everywhere. All the departments are told to work as hard as possible. Very rarely do we get to hear that all the departments, please coordinate yourself so that the company output is maximized. Many times we have seen that the efficiency or the increase of performance of one department hinders the performance of another department. This may not come out in measurements, but it often comes out in the language people use in the organization. Somebody may cut costs somewhere, and later on the cost shifts from one department to second department. Though our intent was to reduce the cost of the department, yes, he has reduced it, but it has caused other departments to increase their cost of operations. So what has actually happened is the shortcoming of one part or one department actually gets manifested in another department. But to think of it, how much of control does one department have on the other department? Nothing. We often tell our departments to work in silos or just to look after themselves. But if this department is constantly getting bombarded by the miscoordination of another department, how do you think the output of the company is going to be stabilized or increased, or the output of the company can be achieved at low cost? This is what we see in current organizations. People solve it by many ways. Sometimes we try to put more manpower to reduce these occurrences because the workload in one particular department has gone up because of mismanagement in some other department. So the organization or the department which is finding this overload of work puts more manpower inside. But though we are working so hard, the results do not show the same increase. The effort has increased. Such a behavior is more often seen in medium scale companies who are growing and who just mimic what a big company or a textbook tells them to be. They think that having departments and just thinking what the department will do in itself is good enough for them to grow. Very often what these departments land up doing is just managing information, processing information. Very few times they understand that how their behavior is going to impact other departments and how that interaction is going to affect the performance of the company. Let's move towards manufacturing organization. What are the core elements of a manufacturing organization? How we put them together, and how do we measure that we are doing it right? What are the core elements of a manufacturing organization? How we put them together, and how do we measure that we are doing it right? In the previous part, I tried to explain that our current practices are hindering us because of the measurements put in place somehow tend to be making one department go against the second department, and hence the full benefit of improvement does not reflect in the outcome of the company's performance. Let's simplify. Simplification means the less points that we are concerned with, the less we have to worry about coordination. What is a manufacturing organization? If we get rid of the structure, if we get rid of any impression that we have in our head, it can be very simplified into three core elements. And these three core elements are material, labor, and capital. If a manufacturing organization understands the interplay of all these three core elements and subsequently come to a very simple measurement, and that measurement truly reflects the performance of the company, we have achieved what we set out to. Let me explain. What I mean by this is, these three elements are interconnected. It is not going to be possible for a company to achieve what it wants to achieve if it isolates capital and then manages capital, isolates labor, manages labor, isolates material and manages material. This is what I mean, that they're interrelated. Breaking them away, managing in subparts, and then thinking the company is going to be managed well is only going to lead to a Herculean task of coordinating these three elements. If we have to go or we have to move towards a time where a manufacturing organization can be very simply measured, we have to simplify. By simplification we mean we need to have a comprehensive measurement which is going to tell us how these three core elements are performing. When there is a car on the road, it's got 2 degrees of freedom, right? It can go forward, backward, and it can go left, right. But the moment you convert the same thing into an aircraft, it can go forward, back, left, right, as well as up and down. How do we simplify it? We say, let us automate one part. He says, okay, fine. Let us make sure that we give him an ability to know that he is always in the right direction, so that he doesn't have to constantly keep checking which side is he flying. So we give him a navigation tool, or in other terms, give him an autopilot. So he is sure that he is keeping the direction same. One axis is taken away. Now, to keep the plane flying, he needs only 2, to turn and speed. This has simplified the operation greatly. This is what I mean by simplification. It doesn't reduce the severity of the job, but it helps you manage much better. Let me bring the same 3-dimensional example to the manufacturing. I said there are three core elements of manufacturing which are in play: labor, material, and capital. It's a very common practice that we measure them independently. That means labor is measured in labor productivity. So, if I land up doing more turnover or increase my revenue with the same labor, my productivity is higher. This is what everybody attempts. This output can be achieved by two things. I automate or try to do the work so well that in the same number of labor my turnover goes up. So I measure labor productivity. Come to the second part, material. Now, to get material efficiency, huge amount of effort is put inside. The engineering may change the design so that the consumption of material is less. If the consumption of material is less, some input cost goes down. But if the material input has gone down and the processing time has gone up, the cost of the material is still very high. So, let's assume that everything is worked hard upon and we achieve some material efficiency. Now, that may force the company to invest in some technology because something has changed. If all these things are measured independently, one can say, I want to reduce my investment in capital, I want to reduce my material cost, and I want to increase my labor productivity. Can you think of a situation where you have achieved all of this, but still the company is not doing well? This is. Let me extend this by saying that a company starts focusing